Okay, so welcome to the ISKCOK Disciple Course, and I'm going to explain what it is. In a few seconds, we're going to go through the different aspects of the course. But the course is important because ISKCOK, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is a worldwide movement which is quite different than every other society that's ever been there in the world, and also in India, because in India, usually you have one guru who's in charge of a whole institution, and then after he passes away, he appoints another guru to be in charge of an institution. And you'll find this in the followers of Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, etc. But ISKCOK has a different purpose. ISKCOK's purpose is to change the face of the world, to actually have a revolution, as the Bhagavatam says, in the misdirected lives of an impious civilization. So in order to do that, we need thousands, millions of gurus. And that's quite a task. Thousands, millions of gurus, and also we need devotees to understand how to choose a guru, because basically it's one of the most important choices you have in life, perhaps the most important choice, perhaps even more important than who you choose as your wife or husband, because you only have to live with your wife or husband for one lifetime. Thank God. Anyway, so, but you have to live with your guru eternally, so better make the right choice. And if you choose someone like Shukracharya, everybody's heard of Shukracharya? He's the guru of Bali Maharaj, and he's sort of a Vaishnava, but very materialistic in that way. Then you may have some problems in your spiritual life. So it's important to know how to choose a guru, the guru's connection with ISKCOK, with Srila Prabhupada, who Srila Prabhupada is, what the disciplic succession is, and how to serve the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, be part of this great mission to save the world. When I joined the Krishna Consciousness movement, 1971, then my whole intention was to change the world, save the world. It was a revolutionary movement, and in fact, it is a revolutionary movement, and we should keep that mood. So the first presentation is basically an introduction to the disciple course and the etiquette during the disciple course. Of course, the ISKCOK disciple course is a requirement for those who want to take initiation in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but the main thing is it helps us understand the philosophy and practices better. So the aims are to improve the quality of being a disciple within the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and, as I said before, to have the long-term well-being of all the devotees and the society. And we achieve this by enabling students, I guess you're all students, even though some of you are quite old, not as old as me, to understand what does it mean to be a disciple as given to us and presented to us by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, and in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, and to appreciate how Srila Prabhupada has asked us to apply these principles uniquely within ISKCOK. Okay, so we want to apply the principles of discipleship to have healthy relationships with the gurus and all the senior Vaishnavas, and to act appropriately within these relationships. And we're going to develop the values and attitudes, because basically education is not meant just for information. It's meant for values, ethics, attitudes, which is much more important than education. Of course, nowadays, in the secular world, they try to teach valueless education. In other words, education without values, because everything is just scientific. You're just learning a bunch of facts, learn how to program a computer, but actually values are more important. And we learn how to work together, whoever we might be initiated by, to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead and to carry out Srila Prabhupada's mission, teachings, through our own example and principles. So So here's the first thing. Prabhupada is the preeminent Shiksha Guru. We're going to go over all this. This is just an introduction. This particular portion you don't really have to take notes on. Allegiance to ISKCON and Prabhupada. Incidentally, we're going to have a test the last day. The test will be quite easy, and we're going to have each of you evaluate each other's tests, because I don't really have time to go through everyone's tests, so we'll give everyone the answer key so you can evaluate the other person's test, and we'll have instantaneous results. And then, if you pass, then you get a certificate that you have passed the course, and if you don't pass, you have to take another berth in the material. So, that's a joke, don't worry. So, allegiance to Prabhupada and the Parampara, respect for different authorities and senior devotees in ISKCON, and understand the selection of the Diksha Guru and also Siksha Guru, and faith in the Guru, commitment to the vow take to Srila Prabhupada and his society, and learn what sadhana is, and learn how to inquire submissively from the spiritual master, as Krishna says in the Gita, Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprasnena Sevya. One should render service, inquire submissively, and learn what it is to have good association and what bad association is, and how to properly cultivate the holy names. I'm going to read, this is a quote from Srila Prabhupada. We have only to execute the order of the spiritual master, preach Krishna consciousness, and follow in the path of the Vaishnavas. The spiritual master represents both Lord Krishna and the Vaishnavas. Therefore, by following the instructions of the spiritual master and by chanting Hare Krishna, everything will be all right. And so that's the basic introduction. So this is called Unit 1. And in Unit 1, we have the theory and the context. These are the different lessons in Unit 1. Welcome, we already did. Guru Tattva and Parampara. Guru Tattva means what is the Guru and what is the relationship with the Guru and who is the Guru. Lesson 3 is Srila Prabhupada as ISKCON's founder Acharya, and Lesson 4 is ISKCON's Gurus. And so now we're going to talk about Guru Tattva and the Parampara. There's a quote from Srila Prabhupada in a lecture he gave on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The Guru is offered first the respectful prayers, Bande Gurun, and Gurun, Bahuvachana, plural number, that is many gurus, but they are not many, they are one, Guru Tattva. So that may appear to be sort of like a contradiction, that we have a guru and then gurun, that's plural, so we're going to explain that. So this is a Bengali verse. Guru Krishna Rupahai Sastira Praman Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Karayana Bhaktagan. And the translation is, according to the deliberate opinion of all revealed scriptures, the spiritual master is non-different from Krishna. Lord Krishna, in the form of the spiritual master, delivers his devotees. Now let me unpack that a little bit, because the spiritual master is not the same as Krishna. This is something called the Chincha Beta Beta Tattva philosophy. That in one sense he's the same because he's representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in another sense he's different because generally the spiritual master is what we call a Jiva soul. Now there's, Jiva soul means like you and I, we're all Jiva souls. Individual souls, as Krishna describes in the Gita, Mami Vangsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That we are part and parcel of him. And there is another type of soul which is called Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu Tattva means Krishna and his various expansions. So the Jiva soul spiritual master is like the ambassador that represents the country, and he is given the same respect as the country or as the prime minister of a particular country because he has been empowered to act in that particular way. That is the way we say that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the spiritual master are non-different. The relationship of a disciple with his spiritual master is as good, this is also from Prabhupada, as his relationship with the Supreme Lord. A spiritual master always represents himself as the humblest servitor of the personality of Godhead, but the disciple must look upon him as the manifested representation of Godhead. So, of course, there is a lecture given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and the lecture is entitled Humbler Than a Blade of Grass, in which he says that if the guru actually thinks he's a guru, he's Guru. That means it's like a cow or an ass, because he's identifying with the service that he's been given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, one's eternal position is Gopi Bharta Padakamala Dasa Dasa Dasanu Dasa, a servant of a servant of a servant of a servant of the Lord who maintains the gopis in Vrindavan. So none of us are actually masters. Ekala, Ishvara, Krishna. That's a verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Arasabdavricha. There is one Ishvara, and that's Krishna. And we are all his servants. So one who takes the position of spiritual master is a servant of Krishna, a servant of the previous acharyas, in fact, a servant of all living entities. And he must remember that. If he doesn't remember that, he's fallen. He is completely incapable of acting as a spiritual master, whereas the disciple has to respect him as the representative of the Lord. This is enjoined in the scriptures. Acharyamam vijanayat, from the Bhagavatam. One should consider the acharya to be as good as the Supreme Personality of God. In spite of these instructions, if one considers the spiritual master an ordinary human being, one is doomed. So, both things. The spiritual master is a jiva soul, but he's not an ordinary human being because he's representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I mean, you got to reconcile both of these attitudes in your consciousness continually. Unless sometimes we do have, not we, certain people do have Krishna directly as their spiritual master. The residents of Vrindavan directly have Krishna as their guru. Lord Brahma directly has Krishna as his guru. So in many cases, I wouldn't say many, but probably no one in this room, raise your hand if you have Krishna directly as your guru. Anybody? No. Okay. But we find sometimes in other religions, people who profess other religions, they say, I don't have to follow anyone because what? God is in my heart and he's telling me what to do. Yes, God is in your heart and he's telling you what to do, but you're not listening to him. So sometimes someone comes to me and they say, well, God is in my heart, not of Krishna consciousness, but some other religion, Western religion. God is in my heart and he tells me what to do. And I said, well, God told you to go to the liquor store? Pretty good. Pretty good God you got there. So obviously, we cannot hear the Lord in the heart right now, so we need someone to translate for us. Just like if you don't know a foreign language, then you find someone to translate the language for you. A postman, and Prabhupada makes this comparison quite often, may deliver us $100, but we do not consider that the postman is giving us $100. The money is sent by a friend and is simply the postman's business to hand it over as it is without taking anything or adding anything to it. Typical example Prabhupada gives of the spiritual master. He's delivering the letter. Still, it's not exactly like the postman that you just give him a gift on Christmas and that's it. So, just Guru, the Vyasa Puja, same thing as Christmas. So anyway, it's not exactly like that, because you can keep switching postmen all the time, but it's a metaphor, and metaphors are sometimes close or not so close to what they're referring to, but it's to help us understand the spiritual master is thinking like that internally. I'm just delivering what I've received from my spiritual master. The perfection is that he delivers the $100 as it is sent by one's friend. That is his perfection. The postman may be imperfect in so many ways, but when he does his business perfectly, he is perfect. Of course, the spiritual master can't just deliver the message and then the rest of the day he goes, to the disco or whatever, not a Krishna conscious disco. It's not like the postman, he works for, 6, 8 hours a day, punches out, and then it doesn't matter what he's doing, but its spiritual master has to be 24/7 engaged in Krishna service. That means there should be nothing that he does that is not somehow or other connected with Krishna and Krishna's mission. Generally, the spiritual master comes from a group of such eternal associates of the Lord. That's Srila Prabhupada. But anyone who follows the principles of such liberated persons is as good as one in the above-mentioned group. I was just asked a question on the internet by one of my disciples that, am I engaged, not me, but they're asking the question, am I engaged in pure devotional service? Guru Maharaj, I have so many desires. I want liberation. This devotee wanted liberation to get out of the world. And they asked, am I? And I said, yes, because you're following the direction of Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara. Therefore, that is your pure devotional service, because they're taking what you're offering, even though you may not be a pure devotee at this point, but they're taking what you're offering and giving it up the chain of disciplic succession all the way to Krishna. So therefore, you're doing pure devotional service, even though you're not a pure devotee. That's the miracle of accepting a bona fide spiritual master in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. A person who is a liberated acharya and guru cannot commit any mistake, but there are persons who are less qualified or not liberated, but still can act as guru and acharya by strictly following the disciplic succession. So of course, Srila Prabhupada's position is very unique. He is a Shaktavesh avatar. It's important for everyone to understand that. Shaktavesh means empowered with the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and avatar means coming down, to cross down. So Srila Prabhupada's position is unique. There are not many gurus such as Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada is the founder acharya of ISKCOK, and all gurus in ISKCOK follow Srila Prabhupada's example, instructions, and mission. Types of gurus. Okay. There are different types of gurus. It's nice, you got different flavors like Baskin-Robbins ice cream. So different, isn't it? I mean, it makes it all interesting. If there was just one type, it would be boring. So types of gurus. You have the Diksha Guru, and you can only have one of those. And then you have, so the Diksha Guru also gives instruction, and it gives initiation, obviously, and connects you officially to the Sampradaya, and he gives you a spiritual name, gives you a mantra, that's the Gayatri mantra. The Hare Krishna mantra is given to everyone, even before initiation. Chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, or your ability to chant, does not wait for initiation. But the Gayatri mantra does. So he accepts the disciples' vows. He removes disciples' sinful reactions at initiation. Don't remind me of that one. Maybe we can eliminate that one. Actually, Prabhupada said that the spiritual master may suffer as a result of initiating different disciples, and the suffering may take the form of getting sick, having bad dreams like monsters, like Jurassic Park or something like that. Doesn't have to go to the movies. Spiritual master doesn't have to go to the movies. He just initiates people. So yes, and one has to be very careful not accepting unqualified disciples, because it can impede a spiritual master's progress. So then there's the Siksha Guru, and you can have many, but really you need to get permission from the Diksha Guru to approach a Siksha Guru. He gives instruction. And Prabhupada explains what Siksha is. Siksha, of course, means instruction. A devotee, this is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah. Devotee can have only one initiating spiritual master, because in the scriptures, acceptance of more than one is always forbidden. There's no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on. So one caution that we can give you is that it's not that you should go shopping for opinions. Like, if you have a doctor, the doctor says, well, I think you need a heart surgery. It's a good idea to go to another doctor because maybe the first doctor is making too much money from taking your heart out. And so, isn't it? I mean, so it's a good idea. Let me get another opinion. You shop 3 or 4 opinions. Obviously, if you're shopping for a computer, you look for the best price. You go on Amazon or whatever. But if you want advice in spiritual life, it's not so good to go shopping. If someone gives you such one bit of advice and you say, I don't like your advice, can I go to someone else? I'll give you an example. There was one personality in the Vedic literatures who wanted to go to heaven in his self-same body. What was the name of the king? Does anyone remember? Trishanku. He wanted to go to heaven in the self-same body. Okay. So he approaches his guru, Vishishta. And he says, can I go to heaven in my body? And Vishishta says, no, you can't. You have to change bodies. So he got very upset, and then he went shopping. He went to Vishishta's sons. He had like 100 or 1,000 sons. And he said, your father didn't want me to go to heaven in the self-same body. Can you help me? And they got so angry, they cursed him to become like a chandala. And all of a sudden, everything turned, his jewelry, his gold jewelry turned black, copper or lead or whatever it was. And he was, pretty ugly. So, finally he went to Visvamitra Muni, and he said, look, I want to go to heaven in this body. And the chandala body was even worse than a king's body. So Visvamitra Muni said, okay, we'll do it. So he begins to perform the sacrifice, and to make a long story short, Trishanku, he starts to ascend to the heavenly planets. And the demigods see him coming up, and they say, get back down. Bow down, mister. Anyway, so they send him back down, and then Visvamitra says, go back up, down. He was bouncing up and down like a yo-yo for some time. Finally, it was agreed that Visvamitra would create artificial heaven for him, halfway in between the earth and heaven. And he would just be hanging upside down. Really can't enjoy heaven hanging upside down. You really, I don't know. I guess it's like going to Australia and New Zealand or something, where everybody's upside down. So don't do that. If the guru says you can't go to heaven in the self-same body, believe him. Don't go shopping for another Shiksha guru. So there's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it's Kalyana Kalpataru, Shiksha Guru Vrinda Kripa Kuriya Apar, Sarake Shikon Saraner Ungasar. For those of you who don't speak Bengali, it's pronounced differently than Hindi or Sanskrit. That's why I'll give you a different pronunciation. I consider the numerous instructing spiritual masters, Shiksha Gurus, to be very important, for they show unlimitedly more mercy by training the neophyte devotees in all essential aspects of practical devotional service. Now, as mentioned, the Diksha Guru is generally also Shiksha Guru. And we get permission from the Diksha Guru to accept a Shiksha Guru. So, here's the disciplic succession: Lord Chaitanya, Rupa, Sanatan, etc., Raghunath Jiva, Krishnadas Kaviraj, Narottam Das Thakur, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev, all the way down to Srila Gaurkishore Babaji Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, are Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada's representatives. That's the ISKCON Parampara. And so we're all connected, just like this particular diagram we're using, just to show that even though you may not find someone's name in the whole chain of disciplic succession, there's many thousands of people at each level. And each one of those thousands can have disciples, and each one of those disciples can have many disciples. Each one of those many disciples. So the whole spiritual master disciplic succession, chain of disciplic succession, expands exponentially, which is what Srila Prabhupada wanted. Prabhupada said we want an army of spiritual masters because there's the whole world to be saved. How many people in the world today? Who knows? 7.2 billion. Okay, so you got to figure, if each spiritual master accepts 100 disciples, anyway, someone else can do that mathematics right now. How many spiritual masters do we need? Because I would say, 100 to 1,000 is good, because then you can guide your disciples. After you get to 1,000, you need a computer. And after you get to 10,000, you need a assistant with a computer. Anyway, so we want to have personal relationships. So there's a whole body of different devotees like this. And the Guru is one. Prabhupada says the Guru is one because he comes in disciplic succession. What Vyasadeva and Krishna taught 5,000 years ago is being taught now. There is no difference between the two instructions. Although hundreds and thousands of acharyas have come and gone, the message is on. The real Guru cannot be two, for the real Guru does not speak differently from his predecessors. Let me qualify that a little bit. We're talking about Siddhanta. That means Siddhanta means perfect conclusion, and Tattva, the proper understanding. That is Sambandha, Abhideya, Prayojana. I'm going to unpack that for those of you who don't know what those words mean. Sambandha means the relationship between Krishna, the living entities, the material world, material energy, Krishna's devotees, all these different relationships. Abhideya means the process of reviving your relationship with Krishna, like sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti, vaidhi bhakti. And finally, prayojana means what you're going to do or what Krishna does in the spiritual world. So this is the same with whatever guru we're talking about in our sampradaya. Exactly the same. Those three things are exactly the same. However, there's a difference in applying things according to time, place, and circumstance. Because Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master, was so expert in applying Krishna consciousness to the Western world, he was successful. I mean, for example, when he was presenting the chanting of the holy name in public programs, one thing he said was, we can say, stay high forever. Did any acharya ever say that before? I don't think so. I don't think so. But Prabhupada was addressing a particular segment of the populace in America in the 1960s and 70s. And they like to get high. And I'm not talking about going up in an airplane. I'm not going to tell you what it is because some of you are too innocent to understand. But in any case, Prabhupada sort of like adjusted the message in many different ways. For example, no acharya in the past has ever had brahmacharinis staying in the ashram, in the temple. Prabhupada did that. So that's not Siddhanta, that's not Tattva, that's not an essential aspect. Those are details. There's two things. Use a common word, common words. There are principles and details. Everybody understands the two words? Principles are, chant Hare Krishna, don't eat meat, fish, or eggs, etc. You're not the body. You're undergoing reincarnation. There's the law of karma. The goal is to go back to Godhead. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are all principles. Details are how you apply those principles to attract people to Krishna consciousness. Whether you tell people they can dress in Western clothes or Eastern clothes or Chinese clothes or purple clothes or whatever. That's detail. But principles are never changing between different spiritual masters. The Guru Parampara system, Evam Parampara Praptam, of course that's from the Bhagavad Gita, that the supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession. So if you want to understand Bhagavad Gita, then we must understand in the same way as the person who directly heard from. This is called Parampara system. Suppose I've heard something from my spiritual master, so I speak to you the same thing, so this is the Parampara system. You cannot imagine what my spiritual master said, or even if you read some books, you cannot understand unless you understand it from me. So here's Srila Prabhupada's unique position as the founder Acharya. We, the modern people who are acting as spiritual masters in ISKCON, don't say this. We don't say that you can't approach Prabhupada directly, but Prabhupada said you have to approach his spiritual master through him and his, etc. This is called Parambara. You cannot jump over the superior guru, neglecting the next acharya, immediate next acharya. So for everyone, Srila Prabhupada is the preeminent Siksha Guru. You don't need instructions or guidance or permission to read Prabhupada's books. In fact, we have great devotees like Aditya Narayan Prabhu who are distributing Prabhupada's books everywhere to people who've never heard of the Hare Krishna movement, right? Is that right? Do you ask them what is their adhikar before you give them a book? Adhikar, what is their right? Do you have a right to read this book? And then you just grab it back if they don't have a right to read the book. No, you don't. So everyone has a right to approach Prabhupada directly. Not for initiation. There's one thing you can't do. But everything else, instruction, guidance, example. I advise everyone to listen to the Prabhupada Memory series that's there on YouTube. There's quite a few of them. You can listen to hours and hours and hours of them. So to hear about Prabhupada, read Prabhupada's biography. I would say that Prabhupada's biography or reading Prabhupada's biography is essential to take initiation. Absolutely essential to take initiation. Prabhupada Lilamrita and whatever other biographies you can get your hands on. Because Prabhupada's example shows us how to be Krishna conscious. That's why he's called Acharya. There's Achar and Prachar. Prachar means speaking, and Achar means, of course, acting nicely. So here's a question for all of you. Why do we have to accept, let's not use the word living, I don't like that word. Who are physically present, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the guru doesn't die, he's still living and sound, etc. So who can answer this question? Why do we have to accept a Diksha and Shiksha gurus who are on the planet? Anyone can answer.
They can correct us if we do mistakes?
Yes. Practical guidance. Because, go ahead. Do you have
I was going to say it's also based on personal relationship.
Yeah, personal relationship. Because we also need that connection. Because we can't, of course we could see Krishna on the altar and everything like that, but as human beings we need that sort of personal relationship. And if we say that, what's that? If we say we don't need someone to take advice or instruction from on the planet, then we're pretty much in the same situation as the people who say, God is instructing me in the heart. He's telling me what to do. And it's interesting enough that if you look at the volume of material that Srila Prabhupada has left us, you could probably pull quotes out to justify almost anything. Not almost anything, but a lot of different things. You can just mix and match, as they say, different quotes for different shloks, or different shloks for different folks, isn't it? You can take a verse from the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is imitating a demon, Ishwaroham aham bhogi siddhoham balavan sukhi, and say, Krishna says that's what we should chant every day. Ishwaro, I am Ishwara, I'm the controller. Ishwaroham aham bhogi, I'm the enjoyer. Siddhoham, I'm perfect. Balavan, I'm powerful. Like Balaram. Sukhi, I'm happy. So don't take things out of context, and the way to avoid that is to have people who are present who can instruct us and guide us in Krishna consciousness. It's really important. Also, if someone's taken initiation, you have to know whether you've been accepted for initiation. The guru has to say, I accept them. It's like if you're getting married, then you really have to know whether the person says, I do. Don't they still have that part of the marriage ceremony? Of course, in the West, marriage has become passé. People don't get married anymore. That's bad. But in any case, you ask the person, and sometimes they say, I don't do. And then there's a disaster because they don't want to pay the dowry. I can understand that. So you need, yes, you can't say, I just married you yesterday. You weren't there. but I had a picture of you. This is the Ritwik philosophy. You know, well, let's use a funny example. Let's say if one of you wants to marry Oprah Winfrey, who's running for president of the United States. So, say, I'm her husband. We just got married yesterday. We had this fire sacrifice and everything like that. But she didn't know about it. Too bad. So, that's one of the arguments against Ritwik gurus. Anyway, we cannot jump over to Krishna. That is another nonsense. We must approach Krishna through the guru. That is parampara system. Krishna is not so cheap thing that you can jump over. Somebody says, oh, why shall I accept guru? I can approach Krishna directly. No, Krishna does not accept such. Mad bhakta puja adhikar. So, Krishna says that first of all, you become devotee of my devotee. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, actually that quote is in the Adi Purana, where Krishna says, someone who says he is my devotee is not my devotee. Someone who says he's a devotee of my devotee is my devotee. That's very important. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Gopi Bharata Pada Kamalar, Dasa Dasa Dasanudas, I am the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. And actually the end of it is, who maintains the gopis in Vrindavan. And that's Srila Prabhupada. So anybody have any questions about this particular part of the... Yes, Rishikesh. What if the
living guru?
What if the physically present guru passes away? That's better than living guru. Then hopefully during the time you were with him, you imbibed his mood, instructions, desires, and it's stated in the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that if you dedicate yourself to the mission of the guru when the guru passes away, the super soul will manifest himself to you. Wow, that's pretty good. That doesn't mean you should want your guru to pass away prematurely so you can see the super soul. You know, we got to be careful. People can get the wrong idea. So the idea is that the example in the fourth canto is that when traditionally when the wife of a husband, obviously, the husband would pass away, and the wife would be so dedicated that she would jump into the fire. Now, nowadays that's prohibited because people are not that dedicated. Sometimes they even throw the husband in the fire. But sorry, ladies. So, and so it's prohibited nowadays. But the reason is the lady was so dedicated to the husband that she couldn't imagine living without the husband unless there were children there that she had to take care of. And of course, with Kunti and Madri, you saw that particular example. Madri decided to go with Pandu, and Kunti decided to leave to take care of the five Pandavas, to take care of the five Pandavas. So the relationship that the guru has with the disciple is so intense like that, that one should be ready, not that one should commit suicide, one should think that the only meaning of my life is to serve my spiritual master, and now that my spiritual master has passed away, my connection with him is to always be engaged in his mission. And when you're always engaged in his mission, you're never separated. Like Prabhupada said, I am never separated from my spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So if one feels like that, one's connected. I mean, just like in my own example, my own life, Prabhupada passed away in 1977. And when he passed away, my response after, feeling very, I wouldn't say depressed, but, crying and lamenting like that. And everybody cried when Srila Prabhupada left. It was very intense. I was in Los Angeles, and as soon as it was announced, the whole temple room just erupted in a wail of tears. And for that went on for several days. So then after that, period of time, I thought, now what do I do with my life? And I decided to take sannyas. I took sannyas early the next year, in 1978, as a declaration of obedience and service to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So that's the mood. Not that everyone has to take sannyas, your guru leaves and the wives are left behind and all the men put on saffron. That's not the point. They dedicate Manasa Deha Geha Yoga Shamor Arbilam Tuya Body Nanda Kishore. Their mind, their body, their words, their home, everything is dedicated to the service of the spiritual master. So that's how one responds. So and also you take shelter of other advanced devotees. You have Siksha Gurus, you have friends in Krishna consciousness, you have Prabhupada. I mean, we have a whole support system. So it's not that someone is just left bereft without any association or any connection at that particular point. Does that answer your question? So anyone else have a question on what?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So,
Is there a way where I can come to know that it is, I can go and take the initiation, or do I need to get purified before taking initiation?
that's an interesting question. There, in the Vedic system, there's this thing called Purascharya. Pura means before. Acharya means activity. So before taking initiation in ISKCON, and we're going to be discussing this at length in a later PowerPoint, is that there is a period of 6 months where one chants 16 rounds, follows the principles, where one has taken shelter of Srila Prabhupada, and then after 6 months, then they can decide who they directly want to take initiation from, and then 6 months afterwards, if they've taken the ISKCON Disciple course and everything like that. I mean, it's not big requirements. But they've understood the philosophy, and the local representative, congregational director, whatever, thinks that they're ready. They get recommended to their spiritual master. It's a very simple system. That's how we go about it. And there'll be more explanation about that later. Thank you for asking the question. Any other questions? Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Question that that Prabhuji had, and along with that, another question is like, how do we know who is?
That's later on.
Okay.
Later on, we're going to get to that point.
Okay.
How do we know? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a guru by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Did you ever learn that poem before? Okay, just a joke. That's a joke.
Okay.
So,
there was one more
Okay.
question. There are like, when you're working and all those stuff, there are some times when you're not able to do 16 rounds, but you want to do it. What happens in that case?
if you can make it up in the next day or the day after, then yeah, that's all right. If you can make that up, and if someone has trouble, I can help them chant faster. I generally I chant 5-minute rounds, so it doesn't take that long to chant the rounds. And the method is, actually, I'll give you the method right now. Right, you try to chant a few rounds in your mind, not out loud, and you try to increase the speed in your mind, but being very clear of thinking every syllable in the mind when you're chanting. Then, when you chant out loud, your chanting will be faster. Or you can listen to Prabhupada's japa tape. He goes, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Hare. Was that? I know, because I listen to it so much. And then copy his speed, because you really don't have to just like, if you try to move your lips out too much, then you'll get carpal tunnel mouth. after a while. So, sorry about that one. But, the way Prabhupada chanted is that, he moved his lips and his mouth, but it wasn't like that. It was Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Hare, like that. And you'll find you can chant faster. And try not to get behind. I had one devotee, one of my friends, Prabhupada disciple actually, he was behind 200 rounds. And then he said, well, now I have to go for japa purgatory. Which is not the right attitude to have towards japa. The purgatory, punishment. It's not a punishment. You should enjoy chanting japa. You should remember that you're dealing directly with Krishna, and he's the reservoir of all pleasure. Like Krish means to attract. Karshati in Sanskrit. To attract, like a tractor, it pulls something. So Krish attracts your mind, and na, there's two meanings of the word na, or the syllable na. One is ananda, gives you bliss. Another one is na, negates the material existence, or all your misery. So Krishna, if you remember that, Krishna, negate my material miseries. Then you'll chant more enthusiastically. And if you study Lord Chaitanya's Shikshashtaka, I can say that since I joined the Hare Krishna movement, there's never been a day when I didn't chant at least 16 rounds. Never since, sometimes I was up to midnight, that's true. But, even today, I came in at 2 o'clock in the morning, had to prepare for the seminar or whatever, and I think I finished most of my rounds. I still only have one round left. Not bad. So, anyway, there's a way and a means. If one has a determination, you can finish your rounds. It's hard, I know, if someone has a job. I also have a job. I have thousands of emails coming in every day. It doesn't stop. So, any other questions? Yes. Yeah.
We can chant in 5 minutes, but you have to say those syllables properly to
like
do the
Prabhupada.
chanting, right? Like
You don't have to go Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. You can go Hare Krishna, like that.
because I see like a lot of. I don't want to make any offense, but Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Ram.
Well,
But that doesn't mean like we're not really calling Krishna
No.
or anything.
Think
right? So-
think of the mantra in your mind, and then you'll pronounce it properly. It has to come in the mind first. If you're just chanting and it's not in your mind, you're not really chanting either, even if you're pronouncing everything properly. The chanting has to be in your mind. Hare Krishna, Hare. I'm thinking of the Maha Mantra, and the way you train up the trick or method that I suggest, it's not an instruction, is that you try chanting just in your mind for 3 or 4 rounds. See how hard it is. It's actually quite hard. And then it trains the mind to concentrate on the Maha Mantra.
Heartedly, like it's full syllables. That makes you like take.
That is
you
full
different
syllable.
words.
Hare Krishna, Hare.
Like, pronounce it like correctly, and then it takes you into different.
Yeah, of course, you have to pronounce it properly. Prabhupada pronounced it properly, and he chanted 5-minute rounds. I'm not saying you have to chant 5-minute rounds. I'm just giving you a possible suggestion for chanting more quickly. That's all. But, if you have time, you can take 10 minutes each round. But then, how many hours is that? It's about 3 hours. 3 hours. Anyways, just a suggestion. It's not that everybody can chant 5-minute rounds, but if you chant in your mind, you'll be able to chant more quickly. Not continually chant in your mind, just train your mind up a few times. And then when you're actually chanting out loud, you'll chant more quickly. And don't try to chant too loud. Because we have several people who are older who are explaining to me, they're quite old in their 70s, that when they chant loud, they start to get a sore throat and mucus comes out. I said, just chant softer. to be practical. Be practical. Hear the holy names. Think of the holy names. Read the Shikshashtaka. Any other questions before we go on? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So my question is, if somebody is aspiring for a guru, and unfortunately he passes away, so should they again start aspiring for another guru for initiation?
Okay. For initiation, yes, but they can accept the first guru. I mean, if obviously they've given their heart to that particular spiritual master, they can accept him as their primary connection. It's not that only the Diksha Guru is the primary connection for the disciple. In fact, it's mentioned by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's spiritual master, that we are a Siksha Sampradaya. You'll find some of the links in our Sampradaya are not Diksha links. For example, you have Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who connects to Baladev Vijayabhushan, and that is a Siksha link, not a Diksha link. And then you have Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who connects to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and that is also a Siksha link. So you find many cases like that. So if one's given their heart to the spiritual master passes away, then you have to take initiation, if you want to take initiation, from someone on the planet and just explain that particular situation. I've had one or two cases like that. I haven't passed away yet, but
Maybe long live.
Thank you. One or two cases like that. For example, one of my close friends was Srila Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and so there's some devotees in Australia who really wanted to take initiation from, I can think of two right now, and they said, approached me, they said, I have faith in you and everything like that, but I really want to focus on him. And I just said, just see that Tamal Krishna Maharaj is coming to you through me, and you just concentrate on Tamal Krishna Maharaj. It's not that the guru actually owns the disciple. That's a misunderstanding. That's a misunderstanding. The guru his pleasure is in connecting the disciple to Krishna. So if the disciple feels inspired by someone else, then the guru is very happy, as long as the person is inspired in Krishna consciousness. So that does happen, and we've seen that happen sometimes too. And of course with Prabhupada passed away, and many people wanted to take initiation from him. And they accepted some of his followers, and they consider themselves primarily connected to Prabhupada. However, the initiation, the actual ceremony of initiation, has to be done with someone who is still on the planet, because they have to tell you, yes, I accept. You can't take, it can't be what we call posthumous or post-samadhi initiation. Otherwise, if we had that procedure, we could, and this will be a test actually on this part of the test. If we have that procedure, we could approach any member of the previous member of the Sampradaya. Like, I wanted to take initiation from Narada Muni. I really do. I appreciate him. I mean, he plays the guitar just like me. He was a little different, but I can really resonate with Narada Muni, isn't it? Narada Muni, Narada Muni has a guitar, Radhika Ramana Namane. I know it's a Veena, I know the song. So, I can't, but I can connect with Narada Muni through Srila Prabhupada. So that's just as good. That's just as good. That I have a direct connection with Narada Muni. In fact, Prabhupada said that the grand spiritual master is more merciful to the disciple than the initiating spiritual master. So that's pretty cool. So all of you got much more mercy from Prabhupada than I do. And so what to speak of the great-grand or great-great-great-grand. So you got the whole mercy of the disciplic succession. And your spiritual master initiates you was a little stricter than everybody else. That's what Prabhupada said. Any other questions before we go on? No? So now we're going to talk about Srila Prabhupada, ISKCON's founder, Acharya. what is the meaning of founder acharya? Of course, we know it means someone who started something and someone who sets an example for the rest of the disciplic succession. Now, in the works of the Gaudiya Math, of course, is the organization of Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master. There's many texts, we're not going to go over them all, but basically the Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was never called founder acharya. It was very interesting. And so the title is a very, very special title. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the spiritual master of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, sent his disciples to London, the first Western excursion of Vaishnavas. And one, of course, was Ban Maharaj, and they came with this book, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, which is a book describing Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his teachings. And Prabhupada very much appreciated, we're not going to read the whole thing, but Prabhupada appreciated this particular book. And this title, as I mentioned before, Founder Acharya, was never used by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It was found in the books of the Gaudiya Math, but never used in relationship to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. In 3 different books. In Sri Krishna Chaitanya, The Harmonist, which is his English magazine about Krishna consciousness, and 2 issues of The Harmonist. So here, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur refers to what he considers to be a founder acharya. This is a quote from the Sri Krishna Chaitanya book that was brought by his disciples to the Western world. The systems of Sri Vishnu Swami, and here we're talking about the 4 sampradayas. The sampradaya coming from Lakshmi, the sampradaya from the Kumaras, from Lord Shiva, and from Lord Brahma. And of course, everyone, in order to be a bona fide devotee, has to be a member of a sampradaya. The statement in the Vedic literatures is sampradaya vihinayi mantras te nishpala mataha, which means without being a member of this sampradaya, you're not really connected to Krishna. So here it mentions the acharyas, the modern acharyas of the sampradayas. That's Vishnu Swami, Nimbat Aditya, Ramanuja, and Madhava, marked the revival of Vaishnavism traceable to the prehistoric records. They embody the reverential worship of Vishnu. Their secondary value consists of being an uncompromising protest against the opinions of the speculative creeds. That's very high education language. Their spiritual synthesis, although sound, is incomplete. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur considers these to be the modern founder acharyas. The older founder acharyas, we're not going to read this, are the ones such as Lakshmi, Kumaras, Lord Shiva, and Brahma. So the modern sampradayas are these ones right here, you see? You see Rudra, that is Lord Shiva, 4 Kumaras, Chatushana, Lakshmi, Brahma, and their modern representatives. So this is the sort of concept that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had of what it means to be a founder acharya. And I'm not going to read this too. So he established, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established this temple in Calcutta called the Bug Bazaar Temple. And here's the main donor for that temple. And he considered, the reason I'm giving this history, I'm drawing parallels, going to draw parallels between ISKCON and the Gaudiya Math. He considered the main temple in Mayapur, the Chaitanya Math, to be the root of the Chaitanya tree, and one of the branches to be the Gaudiya Math temple. He talked about something called ecclesiology, that means how you set up a spiritual institution. And here's the tree analogy. There's the Chaitanya Math, which is the root of the tree of the Gaudiya Math, and that Chaitanya Math is connected to the spiritual world also. This is very similar to the example given in the Gita in the 15th chapter about how the material world is like a tree that's seen on a river. It's an upside-down tree. So this tree connects one to Krishna consciousness, and there's a reference in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a picture of the Chaitanya Math, and there's a quote about Pandacharya, the 1936 harmonist. It says, the spiritual head of the Gaudiya Mission, the Gaudiya Math is the instrument and counterpart of His Divine Grace, Paramahamsa Paravatakacharya, Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. So this is the title of Prabhupada's spiritual master. It lives and moves and has its being in the founder Acharya. So this is the only reference that you find for founder Acharya. So he sent, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur sent his disciples, mentioned here, Bon Maharaj, Tirtha Maharaj, and another devotee, to London to preach. And he was, he planned also to go to the West. Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada commented that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left his body because he was disappointed with these devotees because they didn't have success in the Western world. In fact, with some of them, he never talked to them again when they came back to India, because somehow or other the relationship was strained at that particular point. But Srila Prabhupada, after his spiritual master left the planet, focusing on the words of his spiritual master, showing the importance of dedication to the words of the spiritual master, showing the fact that if one serves the words of the spiritual master, the success potency is there. Srila Prabhupada took up that mission, went to the Western world. 1944, he started with the publication in India of the Back to Godhead magazine. And in order to go to the Western world, he followed the example of his spiritual master. His spiritual master had published this book, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, so Srila Prabhupada published 3 books, which are the first 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, in English. And he took up the mission of his spiritual master, traveled to the West, and Srila Prabhupada wanted to cooperate with his spiritual master's mission. This is a long letter, and we're not going to read it. But his godbrothers refused to go along with him. So in other words, he was always interested in cooperation, carrying on his own spiritual master's mission, but his godbrothers didn't do this. And Srila Prabhupada stated that bhakti, an important aspect of bhakti, is cooperation. He says, when you do something in cooperation with the Lord, that is called bhakti. Because generally, we want to take the credit for something, we want to be the boss, we want to just be the center of everything, like is the demoniac consciousness, according to Krishna and the Gita. However, real bhakti means that we should be ready to give the credit to others and the credit ultimately to our spiritual master in Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada wrote his own pranam mantras. Generally, the guru doesn't write his own pranam mantra. But in Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantra, the second one at least, Namaste Saraswati Devi. Let me read the whole translation. Our respectful obeisances unto you, O spiritual master, servant of Saraswati Goswami. You are kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Dev and delivering the Western countries, which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. So the very pranam mantra that Srila Prabhupada wrote for himself indicated his connection with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur based upon the instruction of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. In other words, the Guru is present in his instruction. And Prabhupada was meditating on this instruction through his whole life. And then Prabhupada stated his desire for what's called the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, which is being built right now. And it'll be finished hopefully in a few years. In the same way that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur considered the Gaudiya Math, the Chaitanya Math, to be the center or from the point from which all spiritual energy in his mission would flow, Prabhupada considered this Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, Sridham Mayapur, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, to be the place from where all the energy of the Krishna consciousness movement would flow. And we are seated in one of the branches right now of that tree. And here's Srila Prabhupada. When Srila Prabhupada was present, he had this flag put up. The Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, we don't need to talk too much about that because I think most of you know about that. Probably you've given something. So, so the teachings of the four acharyas, which, if you remember, I read that quote before, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said they were incomplete, have been harmonized into Lord Chaitanya's presentation of Achincha Bheda Bheda Tattva. In other words, Achincha Bheda Bheda Tattva means one and different simultaneously, how the soul is the same in quality as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but it's different in quantity, and it pervades this concept of one and different simultaneously, pervades every aspect of our philosophy. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did this, and Srila Prabhupada, because of his doing something unique in the annals of Krishna consciousness, what no acharya has done before, gone to places and gotten people who had no connection with the Vedic culture, were absorbed in doing things that are unmentionable, and got them to be great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, went to the Western world. So because Srila Prabhupada's contribution was unique, he assumed that title. That's why he's called Founder Acharya. Whereas Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would have assumed that title had his mission in the Western world been successful. That's when a Acharya does something to that extent, then they can take the title Founder Acharya. So that's why we consider Srila Prabhupada to be the Founder Acharya. Of course, let's unpack the words a little further before we take our break. Acharya means that Prabhupada's example sets the example for the rest of us to follow. Not only his direct, let's say, example, but the mood in which Srila Prabhupada executed his mission. And the mood was exemplified in this one verse of the Guru Vashtaka, Yasha Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasha Prasada Nagati Gatopi. That by pleasing the spiritual masters, Krishna is pleased. And Srila Prabhupada mentions that he became inspired by that mood, or he was already inspired, but more inspired, when he read a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita written by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the previous acharyas. And that commentary stated on the verse, Vyavasyatmika buddhir ekeha kurnandana, how one should be one-pointed in spiritual life. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur commented, one should be dedicated to the order of the spiritual master. That's the one-pointedness in spiritual life. And Prabhupada always focused on that. Always focused and exhibited the qualities, as mentioned in the Gita, Abhaya Sattva Samshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vavastati. Freedom from fear, understanding transcendental knowledge, and being ready to go anywhere and everywhere to please his spiritual master and please Krishna. And of all of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, many of them got the same instruction Prabhupada got to go to the Western world. Prabhupada was the one who took up that instruction. And took up that instruction with no resources. That shows faith. If I ask any of you, or even myself, to go somewhere without any money, without any credit cards, without any people to receive you when you get off the airplane, I don't think any of us would go anywhere. Get on a boat when you're 70 years old. Very difficult. I'm approaching that age right now, and I couldn't imagine it. Obviously, if you're 16 years old, we had a lot of devotees 16 years old. One of my godbrothers, he hitchhiked all the way from India to Europe. And, you can do things like that. But when you're 70, you see life a little differently. I'm telling you that right now in case you're thinking you're not going to get to 70. When you get, well, you may not get there. But anyway, hopefully you get there. But you see life completely differently. Having a hot water shower is important. When I was a young devotee, none of us took hot water showers. I was in New York Temple, they had no hot waters. You know, you turn on the water, it was like getting needles in your skin. And you still have to take a shower. So, but when you get older, you look at life a little differently. But Srila Prabhupada, in spite of being at that advanced age, you know, he just took the order of his spiritual master, crossed the ocean, didn't know anything, saw snow for the first time, thought someone had painted the buildings white. And it was cold in New York, just like it is now. Can you imagine? Like it is now in New York. It gets colder, actually, in New York. Someone from India, you know, you all have grandparents, most of you are from India, like grandparents who were 70 years old coming to New York. Well, that's incredible. And Prabhupada did that because of the faith in the order of his spiritual master. Therefore, we understand him as founder Acharya. Now we're going to take a break, right? What? Question? Yeah, question or two. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Could you please more emphasize on the differences between Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva and Dvaitism, like Madhvacharya?
Oh, yeah, Madhvacharya, okay, we'll just do it very quickly. Dvaita. Dvaitavad, that means two. Dvaita means two. So he considered like extreme separation between the Lord and the material energy, for example. It's almost like in the West they have the prime mover philosophy. You know, where God sets everything in motion, then he steps aside. But our philosophy is that, yes, God is in the spiritual world, Goloka Evani Vashyati, but also he never leaves Goloka Vrindavan, but he's Akilatma Bhuta. He's everywhere simultaneously. So he's there in the spiritual world. Madhvacharya said he's there in the spiritual world, started everything, but, you know, then everything's just law of karma here. And also he had different aspects of the philosophy. I'm not going to get into all the details of the Tattvavada philosophy. They were a little bit different, not wrong or radically different, but just different angles of vision. Where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was able to reconcile, make this synthesis, let's say, of all the Acharya's teachings. It's not enough time to get into all the details about this, but he synthesized and showed that how everything's connected. Krishna is in the spiritual world, never leaves Goloka Vrindavan, but he's also everywhere simultaneously, as Krishna says, Yomam Pashati Sarvacha, Sarvam Chamaya Pashati, Tashaham Na Pranashami, Sacha Me Na Pranashati. One who sees me everywhere, sees everything in me, is never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to him. That's 6:30 in the Bhagavad Gita. We should take a break. Okay, all glories.